Hey Leonardo.
Hey, hi Marcus, how are you?
Yes, yes. I'm doing okay. And you?
I'm doing okay. Look, actually, I'm not doing okay because if I don't travel, I don't doing okay. I am only doing okay. I mean, I feel myself when I can travel.
Yeah,
Of
right.
course, like a couple of last travels that I did, we met.
Yes.
On my two trips after so long time. Almost in a year and a half between
Mhm.
March and 2020 and early July 2021. That's like 15, 16 months I didn't travel. Then when I
Mhm.
travel, I went to Italy for my sister's 50th birthday. Then we had a chance to meet before I went down to southern Italy, northern Italy, where we recorded Truth. Then I went to Spain and then back to New York. Then I went to Spain and Italy again, and then we met again. We made a
Yes.
couple of days of recordings. I was there also with another artist, Beledo, and
Mhm.
you were with Gary Husband. And see, my two international trips were very good for me and you, and also for Beledo and Gary Husband and Asaf and Fabio Trentini
Yeah.
and my new friends over there in Spain. It's good. You know, as you know, like traveling is what I like the most. I enjoy staying here, but I work. I have things to do. It's a little bit too much lately because things are
Mhm.
accumulating after a long pause of not doing so much because
Yeah.
there was nothing to do. You were just waiting, and now suddenly there is a lot of things to do. But it's okay. I'm able to handle. With all my mental dyslexia and lack of focus. Somehow I'm doing uh, kind of okay. I cannot complain.
So remember the last time we spoke, like the first part, let's say, of our conversation for my podcast.
Mhm.
Um, I called the episode like the first 30 years or something, and then I realized, okay, it was only the first 29 years. I'm sorry for that.
Okay,
Because when you arrived in New York, like
I
speaking
was
of traveling, right? That was in 91, right?
yeah 19, 19.
In
I
90
was 20.
actually.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
28. Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a big move in my life. Because it was probably the biggest and most important decision that I have ever made in my life because I decided to quit my past.
Mhm.
See, I never was person who was living from the past, but I was living in environments where other people were implying to you to live from the past. And since I was aware of myself in the puberty and after that, when I started thinking with my brain and discovering things in the world, I I always knew that the past it's great to acknowledge the past, but there is only one thing, future. But when you live in certain kind of environments, when you are constantly bombarded with the implications of the past, then you don't feel good. I'm talking about myself. Everybody is different. And then I decided to make a major break. I didn't came to New York as most of the people come to USA. I wasn't economic refugee. I wasn't fearing my government. I didn't came from a country that was poor or decimated by natural disasters of very bad economy and dictatorial regimes. I came from Italy, from
Mhm.
southern Italy. I had excellent life. I couldn't complain. I was in southern Italy, 310, 320 sunny days a year. Like 100 degrees, like the whole summer. You don't in the summertime you don't see a cloud for 3 4 months. Beach like 10 minutes from 15 minutes by car from where I live. Amazing food, good friends, but something was missing in my life. Maybe that kind of southern Italian kind of provincial life, which it's good for certain people, and maybe it's good for people if they are a little bit older. But for me, that I was kind of volcano in eruption wasn't enough. I just needed to quit, split and quit my past from my past. And also, I had not very easy relationship with my mother, and It was all sort of kind of things like, like failed loves, just because I was rejected by some people because I wanted to be myself. And in certain societies like Southern Italy, as much is a great place to be if you are fitting into that thing. It's very difficult to be completely and truly yourself, an independent person, because you will always have to uh, do things that to please other people, to please the society, environment. And I needed just liberation from myself. Now I don't mind. Like now I'm almost 60 next year, and if I go to live, see, my plans are to live in Spain. If I go to live, it's completely different because I'm a made man. I'm a mature person. Then I don't mind that. But for a person who didn't have a happy, emotional, and family life because of family's dysfunctions and all other stuff that there is no necessity to talk about that. Like I simply needed to go, and I came to New York. I didn't speak any English. I didn't have any paperwork. I knew only one person, and I love it because that person was my friend for since 1980. We were college roommates in former Yugoslavia, and in the early 80s when I lived for a couple of years in Belgrade. And he was very good to me because he let me stay in his place for a couple of months, 3 months. Then I had to go to Santo Domingo because I as a European citizen, you cannot stay more than 3 months in USA. You cannot extend visa. There is no visa. It's a visa waiver. If you are coming from, I don't know, from Botswana or Brazil or Honduras or Russia, then you can extend visa up to 1 year. But if you're coming from European community or you're coming from Japan, Australia, these countries, you don't need visa, but you can stay only 3 months. And I stayed 3 months with him. Then I went to Santo Domingo because his future wife, then girlfriend, still wife, is from Santo Domingo. I had amazing time for a couple of weeks. I came back. And then he told me, look, if you want to live in the city, you have to fight. This is not for everybody. And that's what I needed. I needed the kind of big punch in my face, big punch in my, like to defeat my fears. And then I discovered that I'm not a guy who was suffocated by fears and uncertainties, which I had in my first 28 years. Then I figured out that in very quick time that I'm a man of courage, and I didn't know that. And I just started from zero, and that was amazing thing because I started from zero only once when I was born, and it wasn't a lucky or a fortunate moment for me. It was always unfortunate for whatever reason. But when I came to New York, I was on my own. See, I'm not a big fan of libertarian philosophy, especially the right-wing philosophy of libertarianism here in USA. But my desire to be on my own does have nothing to do with that. It's just my personal, emotional, philosophical, and spiritual need. And I believe that there was only one city in the world that was able to offer me. It's New York City. It's not USA. It's not Oklahoma. It's not Los Angeles. It's nothing else. It does have nothing to do with any country. It has to do with a big city that force you to be yourself. Otherwise, you have to leave because you are incapable. This is very ferocious city. Unless you come very prepared with a lot of money, with a job, a good job, then you start working and then you are already. But if you come without zero, this is very tough city. But that's exactly what I needed. That's exactly what I wanted. And that's exactly what made me a strong person. And I believe that after 59 years of my life, I consider myself very, very strong person. And of course, I have my uncertainties, my my fears, but I'm able to overcome everything because I really, that was my PhD life. You can have 10 PhDs at universities. Uh, there is nothing compared to the life. And that was me. Due to circumstances in my life, I came to New York, and due to other circumstances and environment, I became who am I now. I don't believe that will be possible anywhere else. When I lived in Bari, southern Italy, I wanted to live in Rome, in big city, or going to Paris or something like that. I never thought I would be going to New York. But when I decided in between 88 and 89 to go, I was a little bit, I'm not saying scared, but I was suspicious if this is for me. But a couple of friends of mine encouraged me to go, and my friend from New York, actually he's also from originally from Bosnia, they encouraged me. When I came, like in a matter of days or months, I found myself. It wasn't easy for first several years, but then you figure out. And then I realized that my whole life prior to coming to New York was always figuring out. Also, I had to deal with my certain kind of problems that I actually never cured. I have a sort of dyslexia since I was born, and I grew up with old grandparents, maternal grandparents. In those days, like they didn't know like my problems because I was a quiet guy. I wasn't talking about myself, but I was always fighting with that. Then when I stayed in Africa for 5-6 months in 88, between 87 and 88, I got malaria. Then which and then I suffered consequences of malaria. That's a long story. And when I came back from Angola to Italy, I was sick for 4 or 5 months. And actually, I'm not saying that I lost memory and lost capability of speech, but I had difficulty to speak. And I had difficulty to think, and I had difficulty to focus. Because I had to leave Italy in 1990, I never took care of it. But what took care of that, it was my life, because I had to fight for my life in New York. In that, and I never was thinking how to fix my health problems. It's a sort of health problem, and I was able, maybe because I'm very intelligent, but intelligence doesn't help all the time. Maybe I have kind of a natural predisposition to survival and to improvise in life. I was able to hide this tremendous handicap that I had. That very few people notice that, because and I still have that. I still cannot focus properly. I am all over the place. Somehow at the end, everything happens. Everything is organized. It's kind of chaos. Like it's kind of Ornette Coleman playing the music. There is a kind of this free jazz chaos, and everything is over. But somehow I noticed that actually that was my advantage, because I never was able to think as everybody else. See, one of the reasons that I never drove a car in my life, it's not because I didn't like cars, because I understood when I was 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, and later, that I cannot drive cars. I cannot do certain things. And I have this kind of natural thing that I'm always able to avoid kind of difficult and dangerous situations. When I see that situation is not very good for me, I kind of back up and go somewhere else. And I noticed that cars are not for me, because I believe if I drove car, I will cause a car accident. I will kill myself or kill people. Then I decided I will never drive a car, because I'm incapable to drive a car. And even it's not matter of learning how to drive, just it's matter of focusing, concentrating, because I cannot. My brain is all over the place. And but then these things I was never able to.
Leo, do you remember buying the ticket to fly to New York?
Yes, I remember.
Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, this is how it's happened. Like I was actually doing well in Italy. I I was working as a translator, speaking my first native language, Serbo-Croatian or Serbian or Croatian, whatever it's called today, like who knows, complicated country, former Yugoslavia, and speaking my second native language, Italian, and then learning the new language, Portuguese. I was fluent in those three languages, and then I was working as a translator, like in sports fields and also at the court, and I was doing okay. But then at a certain point, because of my kind of dyslexia and these kind of things, I wasn't able to do certain kind of things to translating, just kind of written things. And then I get less and less money. And of course, even though I lived with my mother and my stepfather, my sister, at a certain point, I didn't have good finances. Of course, I was spending a lot of money on LPs. That's another story, and a couple of travels. But then a friend of mine, who is very important person in my life, Vittorino Curci, and I can tell about him a little bit later because it's very important. He, when I wanted to leave my house, because I wasn't in good relation with my mother, it was suffocating me. I was hoping that Vittorino will help me because he had all possibilities, capabilities to help me, to give me a job which will allow me to continue to study and to leave house. But he didn't do that for one simple reason, because he was my friend, because he wanted me to leave, not my home. He wanted me to leave Southern Italy. And then he gave me 500,000 liras, which it's equivalent of maybe $500-600 in those days. I don't know, it's like that's before euros. And he said, "Look, Leonardo, this is from me. You don't have to return money. Maybe one day buy me something from New York or something. This is for you. Please go, because your friend Ivan is looking for you. New York will be good for you." And he was amateur free jazz musician, sax player, and a poet, and a wealthy businessman who was running with his older brother extremely successful company, and living in a little town, close to a little town outside of Bari, where I lived. And he was also a promoter of avant-garde and free jazz festivals in southern Italy. And he was my friend with whom I was going to eat, chat, listen to the music, but he wanted me to leave. See, this is what friends do, rather than friends, because you please leave. This is little money and buy the ticket and go. And I remember buying a ticket with the TWA, doesn't exist anymore. I went to Rome for a couple of days. I met a couple of friends. I met my professor of Brazilian literature who was teaching in Bari, but he was living in Rome. And then on August 11th, I went to Fiumicino, Leonardo da Vinci Airport, which is an amazing name. My name is Leonardo, and that's Leonardo da Vinci Airport. And I flew to New York. And when I came, my friend Ivan was waiting for me, and it was a beautiful day. But then it started being kind of very muggy and humid. And then we were driving from JFK through toward Manhattan, and when I saw Manhattan, I say, "Wow!" And then he lived in Upper Manhattan in a neighborhood called Inwood. That's north of George Washington Bridge, north of Washington Heights. And he had an apartment that he was renting with his then girlfriend and wife. She's from Dominican Republic. But he just bought a Benetton store in Fort Lee, which is just across George Washington Bridge in New Jersey. We went there. But then a big rain came, and then we couldn't go to Manhattan, to Lower Manhattan to eat. And we went to a Chinese restaurant. And the next day, he said, "Okay, I will take you to Manhattan." And we went to Manhattan, and I was looking around and say, "Wow, this is something." I was a little bit kind of, ooh. Like I've been to big cities like to Paris and Madrid, Barcelona, Milano, Rome, and London, but you coming to New York is different deal, And that's how I started life, and he was good friend to me.
So you didn't speak a single word of English, or
No,
did you have some?
no,
Nothing.
nothing. Thank you, please, or look, or the words that you are learning from rock songs, from your albums, like like I knew the meaning of the titles of the albums, but I didn't speak any English. I had to learn, with all my incapability to learn. I had to learn. It took me 3 years, 4 years to learn English because you know with this kind of little handicap that I had, it wasn't easy in the beginning, but I succeeded. That
Wow.
was it, and that was great thing, like that was. I felt the second day or third day, I thought, said to myself that this is the place I want to live. And I remember when we were in college, roommates in 80, 81, 82 in Belgrade, we had a little map of Manhattan because my stepfather, Italian stepfather Mario, he came to New York to visit in 1969. He brought a lot of brochures, but one of the things that he brought from USA was a map of Manhattan, and we had that map I took from Italy when I was visiting my mother in Italy. I took to Belgrade and I put on the wall, and because we were both fans of music and blues and jazz and rock, and say, wow, one day we will go to New York. He went in 1985, me in 1990, because for me New York was New York. It wasn't USA. Look, this is a great country, but I insist in that. I didn't came to USA. I came to New York. That's very important to say, because I don't have nothing against any country in the world, but I came specifically to live and stay in New York, and I am very happy. Like I don't think me and you will ever meet if I didn't came to New York. You will not know about me. Probably I will not know about you, or who knows what will happen. See, like coming to New York, your world became my world became much larger, bigger, which
Yeah.
means it came smaller because you can reach so many people, so many destinations, and bigger because it's the world is big, and there is so much to discover. I don't know if I stayed in southern Italy, if I will be able to discover so many things, to discover so many people. For me, meeting people is the most important thing, because I'm a good student of life, and I like to talk to people, and I learn from older guys. And now that I reach certain age, I have several friends that are younger than me, and I like to talk to them about my experiences. It's like it was the same thing when I was younger, and my friends with whom I was listening music, they were like 10, 12, 15, 16 years older than me. And now it's kind of I have many friends that they're like kind of in their 30s and 40s, and it's great, then I don't know everything, but I know a lot, and I still want to learn a lot. I want to travel to so many other countries and revisit countries that I already visited, to meet new people, to meet old friends, make new friends, and that's the purpose of my life right now. Like learning to be richer and more educated about life when you are traveling and meeting people, and especially in the things that I like, which is travels, music, arts, food, friendship, good wine, and
So Leonardo, a lot of like most people who may be watching this will know you as the Moon June guy, and
yeah,
Moon June started about 20 years ago, right?
yeah,
2000,
between 2000 2001.
Yes. So it is very interesting to maybe today we can focus on the 10 years or 11 years, that you spent in New York before you actually um, really like before you started this business, right?
Yeah,
So I know a little bit, but it would be great if you could give like a, as detailed as you want to be, kind of like explain to us what
yeah,
happened.
yeah. Yeah, my first decade in New York City was very fascinating, and maybe because of some good karma. Actually, there is no good and bad karma, just karma. Uh, 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 you know, like after the 4 months, I end up like in the most exciting place that it could be for me in New York City, and I will explain. After staying in New York City for 3 months and then going to Santo Domingo for 15, 16 days, I came back to New York. And my friend Ivan said, look, they had a small apartment, and, and now he has a big house and everything. But those days, like small apartments, and, how long you can be with your friend and his girlfriend in a small apartment. And he said, look, you have to look something for yourself. And I tried to look for something, and, and I found a job in a restaurant, washing dishes. But then in meanwhile, because I didn't speak Italian, I spoke Portuguese, and I had also affinity to find Brazilian people because I love Brazil. I never, before that, I never been to Brazil, but I was a big fan of anything Brazilian. One of my first heroes in since 1970 was Pelé, famous soccer player. Then Brazil, kind of samba and carnival and natural beauty and beauty of Portuguese language. I was always attracted to Brazil. And actually, before coming to New York, I say, oh, maybe I can go to Brazil. And that's another story that I can tell some other time, because it's very coincidental that then my wife is actually from Brazil, even though she's kind of born in Hong Kong in China, but she's virtually Brazilian. But then when I found a job in a restaurant, I was looking for a friend of mine from Italy. His wife was Brazilian, and in those days there is no telephone or emails. You send postcard, a letter, and then they sent me a letter with the postcard. Say, look, his wife. He said, look, check this Brazilian person that is friend of mine in New York. And I met this person, a woman who she invited me to lunch with other Brazilian friends. A couple of those guys were working at Brazilian mission at United Nations, and we had kind of great time. I was able to speak Portuguese, and but I didn't like the vibe, because I'm not a religious person, but somehow these people kind of started talking about religion, which is kind of born again Christian, like, I respect, but that's not my thing. And somehow I kind of, I say, wow, my first approaching the first Brazilians in New York was kind of fortunate because it's nice people, but, not really my kind of thing, But then what is happening, like, one guy who was at that lunch, he was some sort of attaché at the Brazilian mission at the United Nations here in New York City, and he gave me his business card. I don't know why, but I called him because I said, oh, okay, other people are kind of, they are who they are, but this guy, maybe he knows other people. And then I called him, and he invited me to his house on his day off, and we had coffee, and he said, look, you have to meet a friend of mine. His name is Edilberto, and he runs the biggest Portuguese-speaking paper in three-state area, which is New York State, New Jersey State, and State of Connecticut. And he gave me his telephone, and I called Edilberto Mendes, and he invited me to a Sizzler restaurant that's very close to where is Iridium. Now there is a big Chinese restaurant just 1 block south of Iridium. And because everybody was Brazilian there, the manager, and we had nice meal and, whatever. And he's a man of culture, he noticed that I like the music and literature and history. And he said, look, there is a lot of Brazilians here, but, kind of Brazilians that you're looking for are not this kind of Brazilians that you can see, like, but there is one guy, he's a special person. He's in USA since 1971, in New York since 1972. His name is Fernando Natalici. He runs a graphic company, and he's involved in a music world, or the world of music business in New York City. He gave me the number. I called Fernando, and I met him on a Friday evening. He said, "Come around 7:30 because we are finishing day. Then I will meet you for sure." And I met Fernando Natalici, and somehow it was a kind of friendship at the first, moment. Like, I like his chemistry, he liked my chemistry, and then he had this graphic company studio called Studio T. He was active since mid 70s, and I will come back to that, what he was doing since mid 70s. But I spoke to Fernando, and as soon as we started talking about jazz and New York City and arts and Brazil, every like three people that were working with him, one American guy and two Brazilian guys, they left, and we stayed until late in his place. He had to finish something. We listening to some music. He had a lot of tapes on his right side on Union Square. He had like a lot of tape that he was recording from various radio stations, from WBGO, jazz stations, and then John Schaefer, the famous DJ, like who programs like ambient and new music from around the world. And then he said, "Let's have dinner," and we went and we had a dinner, and we stayed until 3 o'clock in the morning in a place called Kiev. Doesn't exist. It's a Ukrainian restaurant, open 24 hours on 2nd Avenue and 7th Street in East Village, just one block from a legendary, what used to be Fillmore East. And he told me that he lives by himself, that his wife, Brazilian wife, just left him like, a month ago. And then he said, "Okay, let's meet again." And we met next week on Friday. And again, we stayed in a place until 3 o'clock. And then I told him, "Look, my friend Ivan, look, it's a small apartment. I just started working in a restaurant, and I have to find a place to live. Now I make little money." He said, "Why you don't come to live with me? I'm alone. I'm by myself. Like, my wife, And then we hang out, and I started hanging out with him, and I moved to East Village on December 1st. No, November 1st. November 1st. I met him in late October. On November 1st, I was living in no less, no more than in East Village. East Village, if for those people that they know, it's the most bohemian and the most artistic part of New York City. That's where in 50s you had beatniks, in 60s hippies, in 70s punks, in 80s mix of everything, like Ukrainians, Polish, Italians, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, artists like like people like Allen Ginsberg used to live there, like and Philip Glass and George Stramer and a lot of artists like and that's the place. Like a lot of legendary clubs that doesn't exist anymore. They don't exist anymore. Like used to be Fillmore East, Electric Circus, and then CBGBs and all the Cat Club, all these places. And then that was the thing. Like I came to live in this village. But what is the most interesting, that I started frequenting the world of Fernando Natalici, and I worked in a restaurant until between November and like for 10 months. Then one of the guys that was working with him, a Brazilian guy, like decided to go back to Brazil because he was divorced or separated, but he had a daughter or son in Brazil, and he was missing that his child, and his mother and father, and his mother or father, somebody was sick, and he just left, and he was sort of messenger, because in those days there was no emails. You don't send PDFs or photos. In those days, if you do some graphic job, you send a proof by messenger. You go like and you go and which I actually did a couple of times when I had my day offs. Like I was helping in office, and actually while I still working in a restaurant, learned first Macintosh, like, you know, that they you know, they had like, we are talking about 1990. We are talking about graphics, like a Macintosh, like, you know, I already knew a little bit Macintosh when I was in Italy, but I came, I was kind of fascinated by the computers, like, you know, it was amazing. And I started learning by myself because if you teach me, you are not able to teach. I'm not able to learn from somebody else. I have to figure out by myself. And then in those 10 months that I'm working in restaurant, living in Fernando and staying, hang out always in that Studio T on Union Square. And you know that place because I show you, I had that room that we used to have, but that office was in front, like like with a beautiful view of Union Square. You know, today probably the most important part of New York City, one of the most important part. And but then when this guy Junior, another Junior, went back to Brazil, Fernando said, look, you know, why you don't stop? You know, you don't need to work. And you be messenger and you already learn computers, like, you know, and you don't have to pay me rent anymore, because I was paying him kind of half rent, you know. Rent was cheap, like $450 to $500 a month. Like I was paying him a couple of $100 a month, like, you know, and I was making $250 in a restaurant washing dishes. But then he started paying me like $250 then $300 a week, and I had a place to live because that was part of my salary, because, you know, he could pay me more, but we made a deal and we became best friends. What is happening now? I will explain what is Studio T. This fascinating person, Fernando Pavkovic. In 1971, in Brazil, he was going. He studied to be aviomechanic in a very famous school in close to Sao Paulo. When still today they make those Embraer airplane, which are used by many world companies. But then he wanted to go to USA, and he didn't. You know, he simply wanted to, you know, to go to San Francisco. But then he traveled to Brazil, to New Orleans by sugar boat from northeastern part of Brazil, and he paid his trip working on a boat. He came to New Orleans after a couple of weeks. He went to San Francisco, and he stayed there like for 7-8 months. And in the beginning of '72, he came to New York. And then because he liked photography and he liked certain kind of music, he befriended certain people. And due to circumstances and some fortunate meetings with some people in downtown New York City in East Village, which was very, very cheap. That's where you had the homeless, drug dealers, jazz musicians, punks, like people like, you know, if you don't have money, if you're an artist or you're a fucked up guy, you live in East Village. But that was the place, you know, because of the, you know. And then he met a couple of very important people for his life. One is one Israeli-born movie maker, Amos. Another one is the late great Hilly Crystal. Who is Hilly Crystal? Hilly Crystal is one of the most legendary figures in New York rock scene. This is the guy who opened in the early '70s a club in East Village that was predominantly booking country and Americana music and singer-songwriters. And club was called Country Bluegrass and Blues, CBGB. But then, because not so many people, he wasn't able to book so many people in that place of that kind of music. He started booking this kind of bands that were emerging in those days in New York City, like New York Dolls, like Blondie, like Television, like then David Byrne just came from Scotland to live in New York City, and Andy Warhol was involved with Velvet Underground. All that kind of post Velvet Underground contributed to development of this kind of art rock in New York City in the early '70s, and they started playing in CBGBs. And CBGBs changed the name in '73, I believe, to CBGBs and OMFUG, and other music from the underground. And that place became probably one of the most important places in history of rock music, not just in New York, everywhere in the world. That's the place where police had the first gig in USA, like, you know, things like that. And then he befriended this guy, and then he befriended other people. Then you befriend the Blondie. Then you befriend Dexter Poindexter, Buster Poindexter. You befriend this kind of Andy Warhol. You befriend this kind of people from downtown scene, because it was like kind of a little community. And then because he was very talented with photography and graphics, he said to Hilly Crystal that he would like to help him to not only to take some pictures of artists for publicity to send to newspapers like predominantly Village Voice, but also to do like graphics. In those days, no computers. In those days, graphics is done like by, it was called paste up. Like, you know, you have like a certain machines, you make the letters, you cut them, you glue them, you have a kind of photo, you have to photograph the photo, you have to do make a certain kind of screen, and you know, it's very complex. But Fernando actually liked that, and he learned with another person, and then that's how he started Studio T. And he was bringing those ads to Village Voice, to another legendary figure of those days, like a young woman in those days who came from Chicago, Carol Eicher. Carol Eicher was she was a junior sales representative at Village Voice. Like if you are doing ads in Village Voice doesn't exist anymore. It's published only now 4 times a year, and they didn't publish anything for several years. And but in 60s, 70s, and 80s, and 90s, and early 2000, Village Voice was the paper for New Yorkers. That's when you find everything about New York life, and at the end there is a pages and pages of like virtually every show that is happening in New York, from the huge one to the smallest one. But when he was delivering these kind of CBGBs and FUG ads to Village Voice, he became friend with Carol, and Carol said, "Oh, Fernando, like I like what you do. If somebody else needs kind of graphics, I can definitely recommend." And you know, and that's how Ron Delsner came. You know, Ron Delsner was a famous DJ, and then he started doing shows by himself. Then several years later, he made a company with another guy, Slater, Delsner Slater. Then they became a couple of stages later, Live Nation today. You know, like I met Ron Delsner, the guy who started everything, like, you know, because Fernando knew him since 75. You know? And then that's how still a very close friend of mine, Chris Williamson from Rock Hotel Presents, one of the most iconic and most legendary rock promoters in New York, who did the first ever shows in New York. That's before my time, of Red Hot Chili Pepper, Nirvana, Soundgarden, you know, and he was very close to close friend with you know, with Prince and with Lemmy from Motorhead. Actually, I had chance later to have a drink and bite with Lemmy. That was one of the highlights. That's pre selfie, pre iPhones, and then, you know, like and then Fernando actually, with this kind of series of events, like recommendations in the late 70s, in early 80s, in by 84, 85, he was virtually doing ads and other kind of graphics for virtually every promoter in New York City. From the guys like Delsner, Slater, they were doing like big shows, to his arch enemy and a big competition, John Scher from Metropolitan, who was doing you know, like Santana and Grateful Dead and David Bowie and Pink Floyd, all these kind of things, to the medium-sized promoters who were doing like shows at big venues like Academy, like Ritz, like Irving Plaza, to the clubs like virtually like CBGBs, Village Gate, Village Vanguard, Sweet Basil, Fat Tuesdays, Trumps, just name it, you know, name it. Like we have a book, I have to find it somewhere. Like Fernando, in 1990, he was on the top of the game. And I met Fernando Telici, and I straight from New York from Italy, Southern Italy, via 3.5, 4 months in New York City, figuring out I came to the world of Fernando Lich in New York City, which means you meet people.
Yeah.
And then also not only record venues, also labels. And he was friend of another guy who became my friend. We don't see each other because he doesn't live in New York City. He lives in kind of couple of hours north of New York, like Warwick. Jim Igo, today one of the top jazz publicists in USA. I befriended Jim immediately because he's a great guy, and his stories, like the guy is a jazz authority today, but he's the guy who went to Woodstock. He's the guy, he was very young, like a teenager. He saw John Coltrane. How many people you can meet in life that they say, I saw John Coltrane? Or he was at that famous show at Madison Square Garden when somebody stole some money from the Led Zeppelin gig, like, the big cash. That gig, he was beaten by some gangs, like, because he was Brooklyn, half Italian, half Irish, and they had gangs, like, and then he said, I will never ever go to any rock show, big rock show in my life, But then he loved the jazz, and he became a manager at the jazz department at the JNR. JNR is a legendary store that doesn't exist anymore in downtown. It was a big sort of department store where they were selling kind of refrigerators and TV sets, but they had also big record shop, and that was probably one of the best shops ever in New York City, together with the legendary Tower Records on Broadway and Fourth Avenue. Those two shops are the best, the biggest and the best.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a jazz buyer, and he developed this kind of his future business through jazz mail order companies. And then he started working for several record labels. And when I met him, he was working for several record labels. Then every time when he was having a customer as an independent professional, he was bringing people to do graphics with us. We are talking about Blue Note Records. We are talking about Knitting Factor Records. Talking about Intuition Records, general label that had an office in USA. French label Dreyfus Records that had office in the USA. Many of those small indie. And then because in those days, this thing doesn't exist, which is like today you say, oh, Leonardo, send me Stickman or Marcus Reuter or Tony Levin pictures. Boom, I go to my computer and said JPEG or TIFF, whatever, But in those days, it wasn't different. It was different. You had to have an 8x10 glossy, like with frame. And there is a picture of you. If you're a sax player, you carry your sax. If you're a guitar player, you carry your guitar or violin. And then underneath, he's saying record label, your manager and publicist, blah, 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 blah. He was bringing this kind of job to us, which means that Fernando had to take photos of these people. Then suddenly you see like John Scofield, Joe Lovano, Ralph Towner, like, Egberto Gismonti, Ayrton Moreira, Michael Brecker, Randy Brecker, Nana Vasconcelos, I can stay here and I can talk for 2 hours. How many people, and then you talk to them, Roosevelt Rudd, like a lot of people, like from jazz, fusion, because that was kind of a blues. That was what Jim Igo's specialty was. And I said, wow. And then I was able to go to see shows for free because we knew all those guys in record labels and promoters. And I say, okay, come to the show. And then, when Ray Charles played like a small shows, like for very high price at Trump, like for 4 or 5 nights, he decided that once in lifetime, he wants to play in a small club. He played this small club that standing capacity was like 500 and seating maybe 200. Club doesn't exist since early 2000. It's on 21st Street. It was on 21st Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. Then you go to see Ray Charles, and then you see him on the backstage, and then or when I was delivering or picking up the checks. Normally on Mondays, I was going to pick up checks from our clients. And one day I went to I don't remember which year, it was like in early mid-90s. I went to Radio City Hall. nothing related to Radio City Hall, but the guy who's supposed to give us check that Monday was at Radio City Hall, and was some benefit. I don't remember. I even don't know what kind of gig was. Something was. I didn't pay attention. I was just impatiently wait because I was waiting. The guy was on telephone. There is a, I was in a hall. I was sitting on sofa, of course, like reading some magazines and papers over there, like, just bored to myself. No Facebook, not in the 90s, and no iPhone, like to chat with people, and then there is a lady coming, passing by, and she said, "Hello, darling." That was Aretha Franklin, and I said,
Oh.
"Wow." Aretha Franklin said to me, "Hello, darling." Or like a friend of ours, Cornelis Krane, he was a private parties promoters, and he ran various danceterias and clubs, like all those clubs that I imagine New York post club Studio 54. And then one day he said, "Look, Fernando, you have to come to take pictures for for Village Voice, New York Times, and Time Out, and of course with Fernando I always go, like, there is a private party, and Grace Jones will be playing, and I went to see Grace Jones with her band, and I was sort of assistant of Fernando, and of course, like, nobody knew who special guests are, because they say, "Oh, there will be some special guests singing one song." You just go there and you take this kind of shrimp cocktails, that beautiful kind of waiters that are going around and giving you champagne, and it was some private party. But I recognized one guy on stage. It was Lou Soloff, legendary trumpet player, because she was playing with horns, and I don't know who other musicians were. Probably I can check that, but I don't know. But I just recognized Lou Soloff because I met Lou Soloff at some gigs in New York before. And then suddenly, just like a few meters from me, there is a tiny, skinny, short guy, very elegant, pass by my close to us, and he goes to the stage to sing. That was David Bowie. And this is not place like to the see show. This is a private party, and I literally saw the David Bowie, like like 3 meters, like 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet from me, like and these kind of things. Like there are many other things. Like you go to, like in late 90s, early 2000, I believe, 2099. My friend, I already became friend with Chris Williamson, and he said, "Oh, let's come to see Motorhead, and come to, sit down in a backstage." And I said backstage, and Chris is somewhere, like, yelling with crew, blah, blah, blah. And it was Lemmy, like, and I had a beer and with Lemmy, and, and a sandwich with Lemmy, and we chat for half hour, and I say, "Wow, I had beer with Lemmy, fucking Kilminster." There are dozens and dozens of these situations, but this was my world, because imagine, like, I was the guy from southern Italy, born in former Yugoslavia. You come to New York, in a matter of few months, you are just in a epicenter of everything that is music related in New York City. I was fortunate. I really was fortunate. It was a karma that something, that's why I came to New York, because subconsciously I knew it will happen. I did not then, but something inside myself, it will happen. See, all these kind of things, being involved in this kind of a music world in New York City on actively, but like not passively, because I was active doing ads and brochures and all this kind of graphic stuff for them. But thanks to that, I was sort of living that world, even though like New York in 90s, it wasn't like New York in 1970s, but still 90s, where it was amazing decade in New York City. I saw so many shows. I and met so many people, and that was kind of thing that kind of indirectly led to Moon June Records, or Moon June, because of one legendary jazz musician who fortunately died a few years ago, legendary trombonist, Roswell Rudd. And I will just finish this story about Roswell Rudd. Like, I didn't know Steve Feigenbaum and Cuneiform Records before 99. Then I learned about Cuneiform. I didn't know about Steve Feigenbaum. Today, Steve Feigenbaum is one of my best friends in music industry. He runs Cuneiform for over 3.5 decades from Washington DC area. But because he was releasing these albums of Elton Dean and archival recordings of Shop Machine and Phil Miller, like all my kind of favorite musicians, and Keith Tippett, and he released one album of Roswell Rad with Elton Dean. And then because in meanwhile, in '99, on a Yahoo News group that it's about Canterbury music run by Aymeric Leroy, which now I befriended, a French guy from Paris, I found that there is a project called Software playing somewhere in Germany. In this moment, I cannot remember if it was Augsburg or Nuremberg. It was a jazz festival. And the project Software was consisting in Elton Dean, John Marshall, Hugh Hopper, and Keith Tippett. And because I knew that Elton recorded with Roswell Rudd, and Roswell Rudd was coming to our office to take photos, and he was managed by another good friend of Fernando since early 70s, very well-known ethnomusicologist, Verna Gillis. She was dating in the 70s Don Cherry and co-managing Don Cherry. Then she was married to a very famous sculptor who died. Then she managed Roswell Rudd, and they married, and Roswell unfortunately died, and she's still alive. She lives like upstate New York. And when Roswell came to office, I already knew him. I said, look, Roswell, can you put me in touch with Elton Dean? And he put me in touch with Elton Dean. That was sometimes in December before Christmas. Because for Christmas, I went with my wife and my son, who was only a year and a half old, to Western Florida for vacation. In those days, no computers, no, I didn't check my emails for 7 or 8 days. When I came on January 1st in the evening back to New York, I opened my computer. One of the emails is from Elton Dean, whom I met several times in Italy. I wasn't his friend, but we knew each other. We went to drink some drinks and and dinners, and we were talking about music and see, all these kind of things. It's kind of somehow magically worked in my favor. To life actually was very generous to me. Life wasn't generous to me for first 28 years for whatever reason, but then suddenly life decided to be generous because I moved to New York City. Okay, this is life. Take it, and I took it. And then I realized that magic is always happening. What was happening before, that somebody didn't want magic to happen. Somebody was always in the middle of the place of my space, say, no, you cannot do it. No, you are a loser. No, you are just listening music. You don't want to do this. You are very strange. You are this, you are that. Boom. I came to New York. Nobody told me anything. People accepted me the way that I am. And I had fortune that I was friend with Ivan, who came to New York in '85. He's a very successful man now. He moved from New York, New Jersey area to Wyoming. We hear from each other from time to time. Still good friend,
What is Ivan doing?
Ivan used to work for Benetton when he came to USA, and because he's a very smart guy, and he had opportunity to buy little Benetton store in Fort Lee, New Jersey, just across George Washington Bridge, northern tip of Manhattan. And then after that, he was running that place for many years. And then he opened a place in East Village, only 1 block from where I was living. And my wife started working with him. And actually, my wife worked for him in Benetton. And he was importing kind of Indonesia. He was already there in '90s, and that's another coincidence that he was going to Indonesia before I went to Indonesia. Indonesia became one of my favorite countries that I visited 31 times, And then, but he was importing this kind of, he was traveling to these kind of remote villages from Java and Bali and buying kind of antique furniture and shipping by containers to New York City, to a place in New Jersey, Bayonne, where is a big port. And he had a guy who was fixing them, and he was selling that. And this village in the 90s became a little bit kind of fancy. Rich people started living there, like, it started losing that kind of charm that it had before. And then he was very successful. Then he lost the lease, and then he decided to move to Wyoming. Right now, he lives in Wyoming, in Jackson Hole, which is a very touristy place, small town, but they have a lot of tourism during the winter and a lot of tourism during the summer because it's very close to Yellowstone National Park. And during the winter time, it's a ski destination. And then that was my friend. Then I met Fernando Telici. Then, you know, then
So
I met, yeah, and then these
Leo,
things.
is Fernando still alive?
Yeah, still alive. We are not in touch. He's not doing very well, I believe, you know, but we are good friends. You know, I saw him last time 1 year ago, and I need to reconnect. But you know, he has some difficulties like health issues, but he's one of the most wonderful, most unique people I ever met, and I love him very much, even though we don't see much each other. But he's you know, whoever is listening this and whoever knew Fernando Telici, he can say that he's truly outstanding, very unique. There is nobody in life like Fernando Telici. See, like you meet this, you know, I had chance to meet extremely unique people like Fernando Telici or Alan Holsworth or Tony Levin, like, or some of them are not known, some of them are, you know, known. It doesn't matter. They are unique. Their uniqueness, it's somehow I'm attracted by unique person. You know, you are also unique. You know, like I believe that all friends that I have there have sort of uniqueness, and I'm attracted by these people. You know, I like when people are by themselves. What is happening in today's society that everybody, a lot of people, they try to be themselves, but they end up being not themselves because it's very easy, convenient not to be themselves. But for me, I don't know how to be somebody else. I don't know how to drive car. I don't know how to find a job from 9 to 5. I don't know to do what so-called normal, conventional people know to do. And that's how I am attracted by this kind of unconventional people. And you are unconventional people because you're artists, you know, and that's why a lot of my friends are artists or musicians and unique people. And I believe I'm unique, but I'm unique in a different, each of us is unique in a different way. I'm unique because I had to fight and for my personal freedom and happiness
Do you mind if I ask about more details? So
no.
so you said that Fernando offered you to also be roommates, right? So you moved into his place.
Yeah, he had
and that was the time when you had like that job in the restaurant, you said, right?
yes.
And so just for me to get a better feel for how quickly things developed, right?
Very quick.
So yeah, it seems like everything happened in the first year almost, right? So basically you then officially started working for Fernando also, so like you
Yeah,
had
it was September of 1991, and there is other things like, you know, to say, like, you know,
tell me.
In 1990, I met my wife, and I will only reveal in my book how I met my wife because that's magic, you know. But that's it. But then my wife decided to come to New York for a couple of months, and then she came in the summer of 1991. And that's when I was fired from the. It's a coincidence. I was fired from the restaurant because I knew too much, and they didn't want to have, like, you know, wide European guy who is educated to be with these guys that they are, according to them, uneducated. Even though, like, one of the Hispanic guys was an engineer, it was my friend Nilo from Peru. But, you know, it is kind of you know, Anthony Bourdain explained many times how you know, this world works. Like, you know, they really don't want educated kind of people to work in a kitchen, you know, unless you are chef and cook.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was fired because you know, because whatever. And but then my wife came, and she spent 2.5 months here. And then when she went back to Brazil, I found another job in the restaurant for 2 weeks. Then I left because Fernando asked me to work with him. Then in 1991, end of 1991, I'm sorry, in the end of 1992, I'm sorry, I went to Brazil because I felt in love with my wife. She went back to Brazil, and she wasn't sure, I wasn't sure, but something was appealing to me. And I said, I have to go after this woman. And I went to Brazil on December 1st of 1992. I stayed for 3 months and I had an amazing time. And then we decided, and I said to my wife, let's marry in Italy. Came back to New York in March 2nd of 1993. And I went to Italy in the beginning of July of 93. She came a few days later from Brazil. And because even though she was living in Brazil, she still had a British passport. And in order to, because she was born in Hong Kong, and in order to marry in Italy, you have to publish that you are an unmarried person. And it's kind of bureaucratic thing that if nobody claims in 7 weeks that you are married with somebody in another country, then you can marry. And that and then give you like a marriage license. And that takes 7 weeks, which means for 7 weeks we had honeymoon. We went to Rome, to Venice, to Florence, to Napoli. We went to Greece. We had amazing time. We stayed at my stepfather and mother's place, beach, amazing. Then we married on September 2nd. On September 3rd, we took the flight from Bari via Paris to New York. In the evening of September 3rd, we both came to New York. For the same reason she came to New York as me. She was a dentist. And then some people in Brazil, and some people say, why you are a dentist, you go to New York? Look, it's not everything in money. Like, if me and my wife stayed in Italy or Brazil, we'll be doing very well. But we weren't driven by this kind of, oh, let's go to America to make it, big and rich and successful. No, both of us were looking for different kind of success. It's a personal success, liberation from the past. And that's why me and my wife are very different from each other. But there is this kind of common things that unified us, that we are looking for absolute and total freedom and to cut the past. Because as I told you before, we don't live from the past, but environment and other people, they want to imply these things to you. But when you come to New York, it's a completely different society, big city. And then people were asking me, Italy, oh, why you do this in New York? Like, and people saying to my wife, how come you'll be in New York and work for Benetton? Like, in Benetton for $7 an hour, like, you are a dentist, like, it's not all about money. And we are very happy that we did that choice, because it's not all about money. Now we have a good savings. We did well, and relatively well. We have a son who is 23 next month, and we are happy people. And see, magic always happens if you go for magic. Magic always happens because magic is there. You have to just be available for the magic, because it's life is very generous. A lot of people are complainers. They say, oh, life this, life that, is somebody else for. No, if you stay like, if you have a coffee in a coffee place outside on the table, and you see like people passing by, cars, and that's life. But if you are staying there and do nothing, then nothing will help in your life. But if you stand up and you go in one or other direction, if you start talking to this or that person, life is happening. Because more you are involved with life, more chance you have for life to happen and to do good things for you, if you are applying what you are able to do in life. Finding who you are, where you are coming from, why you are on this planet. But I noticed, that's why, look, I'm by nature optimistic and a positive person. I think I was like that since the beginning. Maybe that's me, but that helped me. Even though I had very difficult life, especially in first 18 years. And somehow it's very difficult for me to be upset. Sometimes, I can be upset like normal people, but I have short memory for bad things, which means that bad things happen, I forget them, because I easily forget bad things. My focus is on good things, because I don't have time. I'm 60, like next year. In a couple of decades, I will depart this planet, and why I have, I don't have another 60 years to live. I want, I don't want to waste my time with negative people, with negativeness, with bad things. I just want to choose, like, I think it's right for us to choose where you feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable with the negativeness. I have some so-called friends, that I don't see. I don't talk to them, not because I don't like them, simply because I cannot handle this kind of negativeness, pessimism about the world, about everything. Like, there is nothing wrong with the world, but bad things are happening. They will always happen. The only thing that we are so spoiled that when they're happening to us, we don't know how to deal with them because we are spoiled by this kind of consumistic, superficial, shallow society that doesn't allows culture and education to young people, that we are living on things based on materialistic kind of values and not philosophical or spiritual values. And that's why the world is fucked up. The world is okay. The people, see, more negative you are, more shallow you are, more bad things will happen to you. Look, I don't enjoy this country, didn't enjoy this country last 6 years because of this idiot that was president. This is still out of my mind, how somebody so idiot can be liked by so many people. And I criticize him because I'm a public person. I have my right to criticize things because I'm a public person. I'm not famous, but I'm a known guy. And I cannot say nothing. I'm not from left. I'm not from the right. People say that I'm communist, that I'm socialist, that I'm this, I'm that, I'm Democrat, liberal, libtard, this and that. I'm nothing. And this is the problem, because we have to say what is wrong with the world without taking part of this or that part. But it's impossible because people are not like that. People are bipolar. Everybody's bipolar, binary. The world is divided in two. Like, there is always antagonism. I don't want to live in a world that is antagonistic. I want to live in a world that is, that's why I have to be, unfortunately, selective. I don't have time to lose waste with the people that, fortunately, I have a lot of friends and I know a lot of good people. That's my luck, because I applied this kind of philosophical, spiritual criteria in a very organic way to the life. That's why I always meet new people that are great people. And I'm not saying that that's luck. Maybe I say that I'm lucky, but I don't know if that's luck. It's just that how things are if you are doing things in a certain way. And I'm actually, rather than saying lucky, I'm fortunate person. And I have so many friends, and I would like to have more friends, new friends, to reconnect with old friends, because it's never enough, because I learn from everybody. You weren't my friend until 10 years ago. We became friends. I learned a lot of things from you and vice versa. We exchange ideas and things. Then I meet other people. And this is a great thing for me. Like, I cannot just focus on, of course, I have certain people that because of proximity of them here in New York, I'm spending more time with them and I love them all, but I love everybody that I like, and it's this is my world,
Yeah, you're a real I don't even want to use the stupid word master of that, but you are more than that. You've become sort of like a genius. And I don't have a word for this. Like, it's not that you're like a spiritual connector in a way, right? Like and it's fascinating to me that sort of like this life that you described from the 90s, where basically, it's correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like it was also some sort of hypnotic kind of trance coming to the big city and having these opportunities, and like one thing leads to the other, and you have like, you meet these great people and everything is like more impressions, and sort of like building your your personality and your openness, and building your antennas also for people, and for relationships, and all of these things. And
Yeah, because I got so much negativeness in my life when I lived in old world, that when I came to the new world, to New York, I had to develop that kind of thing, like having antennas
yeah,
for my for my own protection,
yeah,
and from my own wellness, and happiness, uh, Bill Bruford. I'm good friend with Bill, and he said that I'm enabler. He's probably the first person who used that word enabler.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. That
actually,
makes sense.
I am enabler because it's my nature. Because see, like coming back to you and La Casa Murada, I told you that several times. When we went first time in February of 2016, and like you didn't know so much on well Asaf and Mark Winfield and Yaroslavi, and you guys like were doing some amazing music in those 2 days. And when I heard you uh, playing, that was direct connection to myself, because you, like, if you're a musician, you play with two musicians that you feel that they can connect with you, then you play and you see there is a connection. I'm applying that to life, I connect to people and things are happening. And the most magic things of all is how Yaron came to the picture. That's one of the most magic things that ever happened, like Hazim Murada, because he came to hang out with his good friend Asaf to record album with Mark and Asaf. And he came one day earlier, because he wanted to spend day in this beautiful place that he never been. And he, he came by train from Barcelona, and with a couple of bottles of great wine, and sat down, and he's a happy guy, and and in good spirit, and smiling, and amazing human being. And after this kind of, hey, look, and we say, look, Yaron, look, what are you doing here? Like, you don't do anything today. You have to record tomorrow, but you have a bass. There is a studio. There is a recording engineer. There is a musician. Go there and play, and magic happen. And
Mhm.
this is the magic, pure magic for me. And
Yes. Yeah.
but that's how things in life happen. You
Mhm.
have to go, like, you have to follow, like, follow your heart, like, John McLaughlin's tune, follow my heart. And because why
Hey,
things are happening,
Leo,
because
I
they're
have another idea here, because so I know you as like mostly a sober person, right? Like, and like very sober, right?
I
And
never was drunk in my life, but and I, as you know, I like to drink.
yes, 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 I know. But just thinking of you coming to New York, and the rush of all the events, like a decade of amazing experiences. Um, it must have. I mean, I'm just it must have been intoxicating in some way, right?
It's,
And I'm not.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's good things to, like, I never did drugs in my life. I never was drunk in my life, but I'm intoxicated by things that I like.
Yes.
See, I finally can say that I like what I do. I do what I like,
Mhm.
and I don't make so much money that I could make if I do things that I don't like. Because most of the people, that I know make, except musicians, we don't make so much money in this crazy music. But a lot of people that I know, they make much more money than I do, and but they are doing things that they like. But
Mhm.
I'm happy with making little money, because I feel rich, because I have so many friends, I have so much experience. And I'm really not, I like to have money, but I'm not into the money. Like, money, it's important, but that's not the most important thing in my life. And unfortunately, in this kind of Western society, it's everything is money, money, money. Like a big car, big house, how much money you have in the bank, how much on your stock market. I even don't know what stock, I know what stock market. I that's not my thing. Like, who cares? Like, I I I I do things what, I'm happier to do what I like, because then I'm happy. Like, and maybe some people are happy with that, but then they are not happy because they're happy while things are well, going well. But then if something is wrong, they're very unhappy. And in my world, even when things are not happening in the way that I want, there is always a certain remedy. Because we live in an abstract world, me and you, and other people live in a real world. But I always say that that real world is actually, that's the abstract world, and the abstract world that we are living, that's actually real world. And once we accept that abstraction as a real world, we are doing okay.
Yes.
And then we are not crazy, they're crazy, and we are just normal. And it's a just different point of view. They don't have to agree with us, and I'm not saying I'm right, but that's my impression, that sometimes I see that a lot of these people are unhappy with life. I know, like, a lot of people that have a lot of money, they're envious because I'm doing what I'm doing, and which means that money cannot buy everything. In last year and a half, I had a very difficult time. As you know, we all who are doing this kind of crazy business, we had difficulties. Like, fortunately, I had some little help from government, but it's still difficult because no matter how much you plan things, then tours are postponed and canceled. And then even if you want to book them again, then you see that other musicians who are playing certain projects, they have to tour with other guys, and then it's becoming kind of crazy. But and I don't know when I will start making some money with something that I was making money for 20 years, which is a booking. I don't make any money with a label. I made very little money or no money. But the world is strange. But even if it's strange, it's not the end of the world. I know a couple of friends, and without mentioning their names, and you don't name some, they think, oh, it's the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. For me, it's the beginning of the world. Yes, this idiot is not president of USA, and who cares? But it's that we have these COVID things. We have this kind of natural disasters that are caused by this kind of global warming, whatever. But the world will not end. This humanity, if we continue in this way, humans will end, but the world will stay there. The world is there, earthquakes and typhoons and inundations and whatever, natural disasters, and the world was always there and will be always there and forever. And maybe media is telling us that things are so bad, but if you go to real life, I mean, we are talking about different levels of real life. See, like when I was recently in Spain, here in USA, everybody's panicking. People on the left, on the right, on the center, panic. Everybody's afraid of something. They will die. This and that. I'm not gonna die. If I have to die, I will die. But I don't think in that way. But when I was in Spain, I see these people, they are not nervous. And actually, me and Beledo, we were in Barcelona in a couple of times, and we kind of making kind of ironic jokes with our friend Boris. I say, look, these kind of nervous people, they are so worried about life. I mean, there was irony, very ironic, because people were kind of relaxed. They're drinking their drinks, they're eating, they're smiling. You come here, everybody's nervous, and everybody's. Why is this? It's media is kind of influential, but we have to live our life, like how people lived life during the Second World War, but I have options, I have options. See,
Leo, let's I don't think we should talk about Moon June more today, because we can do like a third part at some point. But I would like to understand, when did Studio T end for you? Like, I know that you were in that office till a few years ago, but when did Studio T stop? And without talking too much about Moon June.
Yeah. Okay, Studio T, in 2002, we, because of the mega gentrification of downtown New York, and Union Square, which in the 70s and 80s was very dangerous part of town. A lot of drug dealing, a lot of people, like crime. But Union Square now is one of the most expensive parts of New York City. And then, of course, landlords, they need money, and they want more money, and that's the capitalism. And then they came, like manager of the building came to us. They said, look, we need to raise your rent, and he wanted to double the rent, and the business already started going down for other reasons that it's not necessary to talk about that right now. And we moved to West 29th Street, and I was there for another 2 years, and 2003, 2004. Then on January 1st, I moved to that room that in Union Square, because we used to have that room as a part of Studio T. That's where Fernando was taking pictures. As I told you, where was my computer next to the wall, and all those posters of Robert Wyatt, Shop Machine, and Alan Holdsworth, and Leorme and Bank, all these kind of things, PFM. That was the wall where Fernando has all those backgrounds, and then that's where Giolovano and Hamid Bluyet, Full Saxophone Quartet came to take pictures, photos for publicity. And but I already started Moon June, but in those days I had another kind of little crisis. Every time, from time to time, we humans have crisis. There is a cycles. But I had some crisis. I didn't know what to do in my life, because Studio T was kind of going to the wrong direction for financial reasons. I lost a lot of money. That's another things that I don't want to discuss now, but one day I will say that in my book. And then I said, okay, I will start my own gig. And I still kept friendship with one Indian guy from former British Guiana from South America, who was a friend of mine, Prasad, in building. And he was my friend, and I was going there at least once a week to say hello, to have coffee. And one day he told me that room that we had for photography is free, because they had kind of a dental lab. They were making a lot of noise. They were making noise, making dentures. They had to leave. And he said, talk to manager, it's gonna free next month. That was around Thanksgiving. And then I went to see manager, and I get that room for a very cheap price, because as you see, there is no windows. There is only one small window facing another room. But that was beginning of the official beginning, January 1st, 2005. It was actually official beginning of the new Moon June. Before that, it was just trying to figure out. And I was Moon June Records by accident with only 3 releases. Then I started doing other things, and then things started flying, especially after 2007.
It's amazing, Leo, that so when we met each other for the first time, became friends.
Yeah.
That was say maybe 6 years of the new Moon June, and now it's already 10 years that we know each other. So incredible.
Yeah, it's it was like yesterday, but
Yeah.
see, things are happening, and you know why they're happening? Because they're happening. It's very simple. Always something's happen because it happens. And you have just to kind of figure out, try to find your space. Of course, being in a city like New York, you are naturally able to choose to have options. If I'm in Alaska, or if I'm in Namibia, or in middle of Mongolia, probably I will not have so many choices because of environment. But I was in the right environment for me, surrounded by a world that is giving you so many options. And when you have so many options, then it's easy to navigate, and you just go, because I have this kind of disorders that I am able to control very often right today, but sometimes I'm not able to do it. That's why sometimes I'm not able to talk in the way that I'm talking today. And but that forced me to think, to use my brain for other things, to survive. And my survival is just being the way that I am. That's my tool to survive. Just be yourself.
Yes.
I don't think there is no. Of course, we have to deal with unpredictable things in life. You never know. Like you can walk on the street and building can drop down on you and you can die. You don't ever know what's happened. You can fly. And you never know. But in most of the cases, 99% of cases, if I use my survival instinct, I will be just okay. And every time when I had difficulties, emotionally, I get through so much stress, and financially, with Studio T, and with another thing later, it's a stress. But then when stress hits you, then hits you so hard that you have to think about so many different options to survive. Then you are, like this, and then, because that's my thing, I'm a natural fighter, like Dviki Ravan, my friend and your friend. I know him for many years, and he said that I'm a three-headed dragon because my name is Leonardo, which it's actually Germanic name. It's not Italian, it's Germanic name that became popular in southern Italy because Pope promised the Germans a piece of southern Italy in exchange to accept Catholic religion. And Leonardo is Lionheart, like a lion's heart, like brave as a lion. That's my name. And then I'm a Taurus in Western horoscope. And in Chinese horoscope, I'm a tiger. I don't believe in horoscopes, but I like symbology. And according to Dviki, the three-headed dragon has three heads. It's a dragon, you can fly, but it's a dragon that with three heads, with a bull, tiger, and a lion. And it's a symbology that actually applies to me because I'm like that. I'm actually relatively shy and person with my insecurities, but I'm also the guy that, I like to jump. Whenever I see opportunities, I like to jump. And because, but it's always good jump, like, like tiger, you are waiting, like, and then you jump, like, the only thing that my victims are not for to eat, but my so-called victims are to befriend and to establish some sort of relationship, like with those people, to do something that I like, that is useful for my life, jumping into the situation. But it's always fight, and like the world is full of symbology, and yeah, that's how it is.
Leo, thank you so much, because you gave me a very good motivational push today, pointing out a few very obvious things that you do, that you are sort of like an inspiration for me.
I don't remember, there was a musician, I don't remember who was, like, that they said I the master of obvious, because what is happening that obvious can be compared to something that is banal, but most of the people, they don't accept obvious side of life. Because if you are aware of obvious, then you are have sense for common sense, and you can deal with your life and survival and all your emotional side. But what is happening, like, people always try to theorize, to put some theories, which is fine. But then if you come back to real life, you see that the obvious things are those that always work. And but you have just to take those obvious things with philosophy and spirituality, and with right dose of courage and awareness and intelligence, and it's okay. But the world is actually, it's very obvious. It's obvious that we are alive, and it's obvious that we have to live our life until we are dead. It's obvious, and it's obvious that we have survived. It's obvious that we have procreate if we can. That we have to be not kind of passive citizens of the world, but active. Unfortunately, most of the humanity is passive. Maybe that's good, but I believe that me and you and people like me and you, we are active citizens of this world. There are so many passive citizens, even though that they claim to be active, but they're so passive because they don't accept this obvious side, which is, you know, the simplicity of life. Like it's good to feel to put like to use philosophy and a theoretical explanation, this and that, blah 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 blah. Like when I was young, I was reading Kafka, Dostoevsky, and all these kind of things. I said, no, that's too much. Freud, Kafka, Dostoevsky, that's too much. Let me go to the life, and then you learn those things in your life, and it's so obvious. And but anyway, it was nice talking to you.
Wonderful,
I hope
Leo.
to see you sometime soon.
We will.
And
let's do part 3 in a couple of months.
And we'll have hopefully some nice tourings next year. I hope.
We have some really amazing albums coming out soon.
Excellent.
Okay, Leonardo.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon.
Yeah. Bye for now, Leo.
Bye bye.
Ciao. Ciao.